Kayla here for just another medical Monday.
Okay.
Manic Monday?
I got you. Yeah.
Sorry, we had a very old moment as we started filming where Hayden said he didn't know that song, like the original or the one that I do.
Well, I never let him listen to radio growing up.
It's very sheltered.
Yeah. Super sheltered.
So a little while back, Thad saved Hayden's life with a tourniquet. Tell us what happened.
Potentially.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly.
How long ago was it? 2 months?
This is in June. June 13th.
Okay.
So.
Big enough to where you remembered the date.
Well, I looked at the reason I remember is because I looked at the picture. But we were working. We were working on our crane. We were trying to fix the main boom cylinder, and in order to do that, you have to take the pin out. And doing
It's
that,
got a pin at each end. You got to drive them out. Typically, sledgehammer or press them. Whatever.
Yeah. Doing that, in order to stand next to it or around it, or even to get to it, we had to put the outriggers down.
People don't know what this stuff is.
Which
the legs on a crane are out that hold it up. So they are approximately, it was about this high off the ground where his feet were.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was standing on that. I went over to stand on it across. So I was standing like this, holding a bar that we were using to hit.
No, you were going to
or
do
I was
that.
going to. And doing that.
So there's oil on these things. They're metal, slippery. And about the time he climbs out there, because we made this pin driver that you could handle and then bang it with sledgehammer without smashing fingers. As he gets on that leg, I see him going out, and about the time I'm thinking, hey, don't, he slides off of it. Feet go down. From my side of it, I'm looking, and his back's towards me, and he goes down, and it looks like he hits across his back. And the way it went, I was like, his back's going to be jacked. Like, he's hurt.
Yeah. I landed just like this. I don't know if the camera will be able to pick it up, but I have two spots in the exact same.
Yep. Which one was worse?
One's a little bit worse. And then that's when I walked out of it, reached down to my arm because it hurt, as you do, and then blood just started rolling off my fingers. And I look up to them and I said, hey, I fucked up my arm.
So, from our perspective, we're like, oh shit, he's going to be hurt. He dropped down. At this point, we were still like, and he's moving around and he's on his feet. He lands on his feet because he's kind of between the cab, almost sandwiched in. And as he's coming out, I'm relieved that he's like moving and acting fine.
Yeah, his legs still work.
One of the other guys, Dawson, my nephew, was with us, and another guy that we work with. And the other guy's standing where he can see him more, and as he comes out, he's bleeding out of both arms.
Yeah. And then at that time, I go to walk into our shop, which is field.
We were working in the field across the street from our office.
Field road shop.
So we were 50 yards from the shop.
Yeah.
So, and location alone, that was probably a venous bleed. There was no squirting or anything like that. It was just pouring out quickly, right?
It squirted.
So you got artery too.
So we didn't realize.
Okay.
So we work around metal and sheet metal all the time. I get cut. Like, I'm the knucklehead that like tape it up, go on. I keep sutures with me. I keep staples with me. I've done all that to myself.
Yep.
So when he was trying to figure out what damage was done, what we didn't realize, it had sprayed on the cab of the truck several feet away in a couple spots.
Okay.
He
so
went
there
like
was arterial
this
bleeding.
to check, and when he did that, it got enough blood on it that it started to flow instead of spray.
Okay.
And it was also like 100-degree day.
Yeah.
So you're hot, you're sweaty.
As we were walking in, you asked me.
I asked him, I said, are both arms bleeding or is it from the one? And we determined at that point, because he was bloody from the wrist down basically, that it was the one arm because that's where it's dripping and running.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I tell him, I said, go into the shop, get to the sink, and start cleaning it up. I'm going to grab my bag out of my truck because I keep a bag, an SOE bag, with all my stuff for that. And I move it from vehicle to vehicle with me. It's my vehicle med bag that I keep.
Yep.
I don't have one that I just leave in because I'm in a lot of different vehicles. He goes in. At this point, I come in there. I set the bag down. I look over. He's rinsing his arm. And I open up 2 sterile pads. And then I get those opened up, and I'm kind of waiting. I still don't realize it's as severe as it is. And because it's a cut, you know?
Yep.
And
I just went to the sink and cold water on and was just sitting there just going, and it just didn't.
It wouldn't stop bleeding.
It was just the same as it was before.
I was getting prepared to cover it up, so I wasn't paying attention like
Yep.
I probably should have been. And I reach over, and we got a paper towel holder, so I just pull off like 8 paper towels. And as he's doing that, I look over, and I was like, hey, man, rinse that off. Because he's drinking water. And
So, side note, and Thad and I were talking about this the other night on the way home from the live stream. When you have lost a significant amount of blood, one of the things that might happen is that you feel thirsty. A, adrenaline. We know that it dries out everything. But B,
Right.
when your body needs fluid, it pulls from everywhere that it can to try to add to your blood volume. And so he was super thirsty, and he was telling me, like, you kept feeling like you were going to pass out.
Yeah, so during that, and it may have been, once we got the paper towel on.
So I put the paper towel on because I'm going to use it to dry his arm off so I can wrap it up. And I put the paper towel over his arm, and I'm like, here, hold this. And he gets it across here. I turn back to grab the 2 pads that I'm going to now wipe that off, stick them on, then Coban it. And when I turned back around, it was a couple feet away. When I turned back around, those like 8 paper towels or whatever they were that I had folded over in half or quarter, it's now corner to corner, complete full,
And it
and
was starting
flowing
to-
out and around and kind of
Through the middle, yeah.
And I'm like, damn. So
That's when I started worrying.
he started getting a little bit.
Yep.
And it was
woozy.
also
Yep.
me starting to kind of almost freak out, but trying to, and then obviously the blood loss.
So then you...
I think
I-
that's the
you
first
wish-
time I
So
said.
that's when I'm like, wait, we got to get a picture of this.
Yeah.
Click, get
As
the
I'm
picture,
just like playing in the
Yeah.
sink.
Yeah.
and he's over there like literally like you can hear him pulling water.
Okay.
That was, I
Um,
think that was almost the first time where I was like, hey, I'm starting to,
He's like, I'm starting to
Cloudy.
feel a little dizzy.
yeah.
Is what you said.
And then you said that the thing happened where he went down.
Well, at this point, I'm like, hey, I'm kind of making fun of him. I'm like, a little woozy,
Yeah.
are we? And
Your
so
dad's a dick.
so
but we didn't
this
know.
is the
We
point.
didn't
Yeah, you
know.
So then he
know.
looks over and I realize he's like,
Not okay.
yeah. And I wiped it with the sterile pads, and it was like, oh, it's really, and that was really the point that it really soaked in, that it was an arterial, you know, I knew
Yeah.
that it was, so I stuck those pads on, and the towel was done, those pads were on, I turned to grab some other stuff, I had maybe 4 foot away, and that's when it sprayed my shirt. I didn't see that part at first. And I turned back around and I seen a go by, and I was like, and that's when he was kind of like, I think I may, like, I'm getting lightheaded.
I
So
was giving him,
And I looked over and he
You were
was,
giving all the
warning, like-
hints.
yeah, he was giving all the hints. I'm a slow learner.
and the
This was
thing
also
is-
a really quick, short period
Right.
of time.
The thing is, I didn't want, because Dawson and the other guy were still outside.
They still didn't realize, when
They
it
didn't know that
happened,
you
we
were
didn't know
hurt.
it was that
Yeah.
bad.
And I
Really.
also was giving him the forewarnings that if I go out, it would make me feel better that there was another person to.
Well,
do
at
whatever.
this point, that's when I turned back as I grabbed the stuff, or more stuff, and I holler at them. But they're out there pounding this pen. It's noisy. He's like, man, I'm feeling I do another holler in there somewhere, and one of them's kind of like, I think they're holler, and he goes, I'm getting lightheaded, like I could pass out. We had a bar stool type chair behind us, and I was like, let's have a seat so you don't fall down and hurt yourself. And at that point, I grab his arm. I've got his arm just like this, trying to stop what I can until I get more. And I set him down, and as he's setting down, he's like, I think I'm going to pass out. And he pretty much was like, boom, and I just grabbed the back of his neck.
I just thought he was dragging me around. That's all it was all blurry.
Yeah.
He'd pretty well gone limp, and he wasn't talking to me. And it was like, fuck. And so I got him by the neck, and I turned to lay him on the floor so he doesn't fall out of the stool, and I realized there's footprints in blood. And it's like, this got way more out of hand than I thought.
Yeah.
I lay him on the ground, and I'm like, tourniquet time. So I reach over.
Well, I stand back up.
And I had hollered. Well, I had hollered for Dawson the third time, and they were walking in. Because I was thinking the same thing, like me putting a tourniquet on him, getting him to somewhere or whatever. Because at this point, throwing him in the car and getting him to wherever the hospital that we're going to the ER or whatever is my quickest point. Once I get this stopped. So I lay him down on the ground, and I turn and look, and that bag's 4 foot away. So like the tourniquet 4 foot away is a long ways all of a sudden.
This is why we tell you carry medical on your person.
And I did. I had my ankle kit.
Yep.
But I had 5 tourniquets right there.
Yep.
Roughly. I let go of him. I reach over. I grab the top one or one of them, and it was a cat's.
See, we don't hate cats here. We like them.
As I turn around, I turn back around, and he's starting to get back up. And all of a sudden he's like, hey. And I said, we're going to put a tourniquet on this.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was the cold floor, which is a thing.
It was the laying down.
It was your blood pressure, evening back out.
I remember just being vision better than it was. And I'm like, why am I laying on the ground?
So he starts standing back up, and I told him, I said, we're putting a tourniquet on it. And he was like, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then we went back over. I went back over to the sink, and then doing all the same. But
so in that, I get the tourniquet on him, pull it tight, Velcro it, and I start cranking. Blood on the hands. I turn it tight, about as tight as I can get it. I've had some hand stuff. It's getting better. But I cranked it down. I wiped his arm off, and about that time Dawson comes walking in. I wipe his arm off, and it slowed it, but it's still coming. So Dawson steps up about that time. I'm like, Dawson, and for those that you don't know, that Dawson is a big, strong man.
Yes.
He put it on it,
and it stopped it.
Well, it stopped it, and I watched again, and it barely started going again. So I reach up, and I can't get another to lock it in, and I'm like, Dawson, and he cranks one more, and then it stopped. But we put a cranking on it.
I remember sitting there and being like, this is taking a while, and it's getting really tight.
So, people complain sometimes in the medical class about how tight we actually make you do them. Like, if I can fit my finger in there, it is not tight enough. If you can feel a pulse, it is not tight enough. And we want you to put it on that tight every single time you put one on, because if something happens and it does just slow it down, it at least buys you enough time to come up with a plan B.
Yeah. And which I knew from doing it here and doing it when we just do it, blah, 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 like how tight it was going to be and what it feels like. And
so, and it was, you weren't getting a finger. I mean, you weren't going to, it was fucking tight. Like, tight.
And that's how tight it took for it to stop blood flow.
And with him being young, and in where you guys do put him on in here and test it, like everybody knows it's not at that moment I'm dying, so the blood pressure may not be quite as high or whatever. But anyway, we got him. Then it was like, as soon as that was on, it was much lighter. Everybody felt better.
I was like, man, I feel much better now.
We kind of got back to normal conversation. You know, at that point, it's like, okay, whose truck are we taking? So, but yeah.
And Dad was like, not mine. I don't want blood in it. Like,
well, yeah, I don't want. Who wants?
Yeah, we were like, who has leather seats? I was like, we have leather.
Yeah.
But no, we had about a little less than a 30-minute drive to the ER, and that whole scenario up to the tourniquet.
2 to 3 minutes max.
Man, I'm guessing. I really believe it's probably in the 3.5 minute time period.
Okay.
Mostly for the fact that we didn't.
I don't think
we didn't know how.
Yeah, I mean, if I would have been right at the beginning, like
But we did get some cool pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will put them here, Shelton, right here. This is where we want them. This is your warning. If you are squeamish, skip ahead in the video 10 seconds.
And it's not horrible, gory or anything.
No, but some people.
But there is blood.
Yeah.
That one picture's
a pretty good
nasty
flow there. But so we get to the ER.
Hold on just a second. I'm giving them the full 10 to get back around. Like enough time to look.
I didn't know if they would cut. I'm with you.
Okay.
So in that, I'll do this. So at this point, we're headed to the ER, and I'm like, I got to tell James because. So I take a picture of my shirt as I'm in the truck, and I'm like, I sent him this message, and I'm like, Hayden fucks up everything I have. And James replies back, what did he do now? And actually, I think it was, what did he do now, and is everybody okay?
Yeah. And then obviously I wasn't in it 100% because I get on my phone, he's on his phone, I send a picture to my girlfriend, and then I send a picture to my friend who's in the Army right now of like this, so they can see. He calls me, and he's like, what happened? And like, so when I hit this whole start of the video, I hit my ass and my back, and I'm like, and like everything hurt, and I'm like, I messed up my leg. And then he goes,
I'm like, dude, it's
your arm. And I'm like, my arm. And then, so
anyway, we get to the ER. We go in there. The lady that is checking us in, it was a girl that I went to school with and knew. And there was an older lady getting checked in. And at this point, like, we're comfortable. We're good. They're checking in. I've got blood on my shirt. He's got a tourniquet on, and we're standing behind them waiting, and they all kind of keep looking over at us, and we're like, yeah, you know, and they're, but we get in there, and there was a paramedic doing like an internship or something. So we get in there. He's cool. He sees it, and he's just kind of like, okay. And, but the ER doctor comes in.
Yeah.
And he looks at it, and then he looks at his arm. I've got spray on me, and he's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
What is this?
My arm's
and I'm like, that's yeah, his arm's purple, swollen at this point. We're almost to and he's like, man, this is really starting to hurt. But he's like, I don't even know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And he's like, take that off there. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, man.
I was like, before you do that,
when you take that off, it starts spraying again.
It's about to get real again.
And he's like, no, just take it off. I was like, look at this. It's like, look at this first. Because if it starts going how it was going, this room's going to be a mess.
So I was super surprised. They had me take it off. The paramedic, when the doctor was being that way, the paramedic looks over at me, and I'm like, and he's like, I know, you know. It was kind of crazy.
That's way crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So always take a second person to the ER with you to be your advocate.
Yeah. So to my surprise, when I took it off, and I took it off, threw it in the trash once we were, I don't know if that time period and no pressure in there from the tourniquet to the cut, it coagulated up, but it did not spray at that point.
Okay.
but it did still. It was just kind of oozing and bleeding.
Yeah, it had already started forming its own clot.
Yep. Yeah, because I assumed through that artery it probably starts working its way up or whatever. But
I was also surprised at how long it took for the complete feeling to come back after the tourniquet. And it was
on a cat tourniquet. You mean that you might have had a little bit of nerve issues?
Really?
What?
That happens?
What?
like it was, and the pain started coming on, and I was sitting there, moving your legs. Like,
Yeah, he
It
actually
hurt.
mentioned it. Still probably some shock. He's like, this is really starting to hurt. His arm had starting to swell. And
But like the
Yep.
relief,
Uncomfortable relief.
yeah.
Like all the tingles when it comes back.
Yeah, it was like your foot fell asleep,
Yep.
but times 10. And
So, how was it putting a tourniquet on your own kid?
well, I mean, once I put it on there, and so me, at this point, he's getting woozy, starting, and he's not like standing on his own and all this. And I had help right out there. They also, and I'm not blaming them, they also didn't think it was as severe because Dawson, they would have been right there too. When we realized it was severe, and it's like, I'm having to lug him around now, do this, lug him around. Yeah, it starts making you like,
Gets a little scary.
this got real fucking serious real fast.
And you were a dick in the beginning.
Well, I'm never easy. So
He's
like, take pictures.
so
I'm like, hey,
here
man,
was-
it's getting kind
here
of
was
bad.
my biggest takeaway. Other than have a tourniquet around, have it somewhere. But my truck was 50, 60 feet from feet, not yards, where we were doing this. Had I not grabbed that bag on my way by, and I would have been into my ankle kit, which is I didn't have a problem with. But had I not had any of that, and I had to go get to the truck at that point, as quick as I can run 50 feet, open a door, grab a bag, and run back, that's a lot of time.
Yep.
Like a
And
lot of
without
time right
slipping
there.
on all the blood when you come back in.
Not even that. I mean, at
And-
that point, it would have
Yeah.
been really bad.
Yep.
Especially if we didn't have it to begin with. I mean, like it.
So
been
when did you
ripping
take immediate
shirts
action
off.
medical?
I have not yet.
You
This
haven't
is where
taken it
she's going to
yet?
yell at both of
Yeah.
us because I haven't either.
But we have done that stuff
These
in other
motherfuckers.
classes.
I've scheduled it 2 other times, and something's come up, and I hadn't been able to come down.
The next one we have.
But you also got to realize we had all that shit because of here.
Yeah.
Because of James, because of the fighting pistol class or rifle class, talking about tourniquets and that stuff.
That's why we include the tourniquets in every single class we do. Like we tell people, my thing, if I could carry one piece of medical equipment, it's a tourniquet. Two tourniquets.
Yeah.
Like that
Yep.
is the most important thing to know how to do, to carry, and that is why we have it across every single class because it is
Fortunately,
really
because of
important stuff to
here, we've got tourniquet, at least one rats or something stuck in the truck, our work truck. I carry that bag. I have several within distance of me, and I mean that's because of here. It really is. I mean it's
Yeah.
carry your shit and get training, guys.
Yeah, and I had the minimal amount of training because of here through.
But it's not rocket science.
It's not,
Yeah.
and you can't
put the
panic, and
tourniquet
you got to
on,
do your thing.
and you tighten it until
Until
the
you
bleeding
can't.
stops.
Right. But
It's not
but
rocket
it's still
science.
like that's a big thing because it was here that otherwise that would have been even.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I could have wrapped around it tight enough and got it to, but man, the tourniquet made us feel really safe at that point, or a lot better.
And me being around people, if like we thought of like if I was on a motorcycle or a dirt bike by myself,
If he had been by himself,
it would have got bad enough to where I probably would have like shirt off, call,
maybe.
the phone
I mean,
there.
but if you would have at the
Nope.
point where I laid
Y'all
you
are
down on the
both
ground,
going to come
you may
take
not have.
immediate action medical, and I'm going to teach you how to put a tourniquet on your damn self.
We've got that. I'm not saying we couldn't use more of it.
it.
That part we know.
Yeah.
He knows. You don't get to say,
Yeah.
I know too.
We've
Like,
done
No,
I've
he
done
knows.
it.
So we've come back. My my youngest son Carson, before he ever took fighting pistol, he was at home in the living room putting tourniquets on.
Hell yeah.
You know, so.
Whew, I think it's time to say the line. This is the first video I've done since everything happened, and it's kind of fucking with me a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, guys, your responsibility to be ready for the fight never ends.